Welcome to everybody tonight. This is a great night. I'm very excited to have my friend Rachel Valentine with us. She is a licensed mental health therapist practicing in Northwest Iowa. She's been in business or in practice for 15 years, and she has a ton of knowledge on gut health and mental and emotional well-being. And she has a great philosophy of it. Everything's connected. It's all connected. So I would like to welcome you. Welcome, Rachel. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, guys. I'm really excited to be here with Julie, and I was so glad when Julie asked me. And I think we're going to have a great time together.
I think we are. Can you tell them a little bit just about yourself, like your family life and that?
Yeah. Well, family life is probably the craziest aspect of my life, just because I have two boys and being a busy mom who is trying to do that nebulous and I think kind of crazy thing of trying to balance home life and work life, and living out and living into the wholeness that God created us for. So I have two boys, they're 12 and 7, married to my college sweetheart. So we are old, you guys, we're old. I think we're going on 20 years of marriage, God help us. And so he has the patience of Job, and somehow we make it all work.
Excellent, excellent. One thing I would like to just tell you, the thing that I really love about you, and I just recommend that everybody follow you on Facebook. You have your fingerprint on that deep inner thing that women think and are afraid to say. And you say it, and you don't say it in shameful and condemning, but you say it in encouraging and enlightening and offering hope.
Oh, bless you.
Like you say, so I'm just like, oh, I wish I could talk like her.
Oh, the key word is honesty. Like we all have stuff, we all have wounds, and we all have learned to wear all this covering over the top of it that is all a bunch of baloney, if we're honest, right? But underneath, we are just our tender, oftentimes childlike selves that are all in need of the same things. We all need love. We all need safety and security, and we all need to feel like we matter and we have purpose in this life. And so tapping into those core things is like that's the water from which all of us flow from. So we might as well just be real about it. So, but today we get to talk about the gut, and gosh, I think people are going to have so much hope. That is my hope with our talk, is that people come away feeling like I'm not alone with this. There's a possible, there's a possibility of hope that I can pursue. So, shall we get after it? I'm excited.
Good. Okay, so my first question to you is, why are you passionate about gut health? What's your gut health story?
Oh, because everybody who's passionate about gut health has a story.
Mm-hmm.
I think mine is probably a lot like many women. I am I'm a survivor of stress. I am still learning how to bring my stress level down. Um, oh goodness sakes, I think for a long time I tried to take on way too much than what was possible. I was a big people pleaser, very much afraid of letting people down or what will people think. And I took on a lot also because I'm a dreamer and a visionary, and I'm very passionate about things. And so it was very hard for me to figure out what's my best yes. And in the process of all of that, I started to notice in my late 30s, early 40s, that my body was going to pot. Like I started to notice I was not getting restful sleep. I was having middle of the night insomnia. I was having a lot more anxiety, social anxiety. I was isolating. I started having a lot of gastrointestinal problems that I didn't have in years before, which then created kind of like this ever revolving door with the doctor's office with another diagnosis on top of diagnosis. And I think they all started to just leapfrog on top of each other. So, like acid reflux and irritable bowel and insulin resistance and again, the low grade depression and anxiety and just a lot of fatigue, irritability. I couldn't stand for people, especially my kids, to be loud in my face. And did I tell you I have boys? They're loud and in my face. I didn't want my husband to touch me. Like all of these things just kept piling on. And every time I went to the doctor, there was a different diagnosis. And of course, there was a different medication. And so I gladly took them because I didn't have any reason not to. And I was doing things like changing my diet and I was exercising and I felt like I was doing all of the right things. And yet I was feeling worse and worse and worse. And of course, every time we would go to the doctor, there would be another bill. And so it got to the point where I just was like, there has to be an answer. And I just kind of had this still small knowing that was a curious wondering, actually, more than a knowing. And it was, I wonder if these things are related because I kept seeing specialist after specialist, doctor after doctor, and each one would see their one little individual part and not really look at it as a collective whole. And I was thinking, I think God's design is one of us being a whole. And so I'm not getting answers. And so I started just kind of doing some research. I think as a mental health clinician, I was stumbling across more and more research about probiotics and about omega fatty acids for brain health. And as options, like alongside options for mental health. And I thought, what's that about? And so lo and behold, when I was just at my very worst place ever of how I was feeling, somebody reached out to me and said, hey, have you ever thought about thinking more about supplementation for your health, for your gut health? And I really only knew about those two things, probiotics and omega fatty acids. But I was really, really feeling hopeless. And in that place, I said, tell me more. Let's give it a shot. And that was 3.5 years ago. And now ever since then, I have it's been like when your eyes become open to see something and now you see it everywhere and you're like, why can't everyone needs to see this? Like, this is well researched. Why are we not talking about this every single day? And of course, now I am talking about it every single day. So I think most people fall into the functional world because somehow, somewhere they have been let down. And the traditional route has not proven to be effective. And that is definitely my story. And so I think pretty on in the first 6 to 9 months, my doctor started firing me, not because I was belligerent or an awful patient to work with, but because first of all, my symptoms went away. And second of all, like my blood sugars balanced out. I didn't have the gastrointestinal pain or bloating or acid reflux anymore. And so there wasn't a need to continue to treat me anymore, which was a beautiful, wonderful thing. And it's just been that same way for the last 3.5 years. It's like, I'm a faith-based girl, but I really do believe that when God says when he starts a good work in us, he doesn't just mean to bring us to physical health. He means to bring us to complete wholeness, and restoration. And I feel like the more I pursue this journey, the more whole I continue to become with my mind, my body, my spirit, my creativity, my connections with people around me. And so now I'm just like, whoa, everybody know, everybody.
I feel the same way. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
you become more, it's a whole person thing. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just, some good gut microbes. It's just crazy, but it is.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. It is. Um, and I think along the way, I have this really big wish. My big wish is in time. I hope that our traditional, I work a lot with medications. I don't prescribe them. I'm not an MD or doctor, but I work a lot and consult with doctors for my patients. And I think to myself, if there could be this beautiful marriage of the world of psychiatry with the world of functional medicine working together instead of kind of skeptical of one another, I think it would just be a fabulous thing. And and if I tip my hat a little bit, I think that we probably wouldn't need to be so regularly medicated to the degree that we are. I think that perhaps people could take a lot less medication, maybe even work and get core root things in their body mediated before they even need to have some chronic medication. And so, yeah, my biggest, greatest hope is that can be the way of the future.
That would be awesome. And I,
Yeah,
I agree. And I have some experience with some psychiatric meds that a family member is on, and her psychiatrist was very much positive about supplementing.
that's
He was
that's awesome.
cautious about prescribing meds and very gung ho about, let's see about supplementing first and try to get natural substances, things that our diets are missing, into our bodies to help with that regulation. And what a blessing.
I love it. I love it.
So can you just define for me, when you talk functional medicine, what is that?
Yeah. Functional medicine looks at the body as a whole. So it looks at every system of the body as really working in companionship with one another. And it looks to what are the core root issues, which sounds like a really big, scary, hairy, over the top deal. But ultimately, when you work with a functional provider, most often when they boil things down to the root cause issues of most chronic illnesses, they really boil them down to 3 or 4 areas, which would be inflammation in the body, which is really the soil in which chronic disease grows. um, they boil it down to hormones, and blood sugar together, and then they boil it down to the gut microbiome, which is all of the bacteria, all of the inner workings of the gastrointestinal system throughout the large intestine, small intestine, colon, esophagus, all the way up. So, but they see how the whole body is designed to coordinate together, and that they don't want to put a Band-Aid approach on top. They don't just want to prescribe medication to make your symptoms go away. They actually want to work to find out what's causing the underlying symptom and work to alleviate the originating cause.
Cool.
Yeah, it is very cool. And I think from a mental health perspective, what is so cool about this for me is that we have been hearing things for a while. Like there's things like the ACEs study, the early childhood study on early child trauma, for instance, and seeing linkages between early trauma and longitudinal long-term disease. Things like obesity to fibromyalgia to substance addiction to heart disease, cancers, goes on and on. And so making a linkage, right, to trauma and stressful wounding in the body to actually it bearing out and playing a part in the body. And so for me, this functional leap has not been a hard leap to take. Because again, you start to think about and I'm a big believer in story. I think so often the clients that I work with, beyond and underneath the diagnosis that they are given, is honestly a story. And usually it's a story of pain, a story from early childhood or later in life wounding. And if we're careful and mindful to mine for the treasures of what is the story, then certain things start to play out. There's a really wonderful author by the name of Susie Larson. She says, and I'm going to totally butcher this, but I loved it, where she said, the stories that our souls carry live in ourselves. And so there is this direct connection between the pain that we harbor inside of ourself, that it will come out over time in the body. And that plays itself out all over the place in the design of the body. And yes, it's true that there are many individuals who have certain diagnoses where that would be a lot more difficult to say there's a story. However, we do know that there's a story of how things get broken in the body with the microbiome, which is a story in and of itself. And so again, what I love about this approach is that it's not that we show up to a doctor or a clinician's office and say to ourselves, I don't have any idea, like, what is this, what things just spring on me and I don't have any control and I don't know what this is about. No, there may be a lot more that we can do as advocates and students of this beautiful body that we're given, that we have a lot more to say and to do and to participate and befriend our body and our mind and our gut than we ever gave ourselves credit for with a medication-only model.
I love how you explain that. Okay, so gut health. I always think of mental health as, I mean, it's bigger than just like anxiety or depression. It's emotional well-being. It's tied to your cortisol. It's all related.
It's a lot.
How,
Which is why we think, right? Like, okay, if we're going to think mental health, we're going to just put it, it's always a part of the body, right? It's
right. If
connected.
you just say, no, it's just how you're feeling in your heart or whatever, there's so much more going on. It really is.
Yes.
So how is the gut microbiome tied to the emotional well-being?
Like all the ways. Okay, so I jotted down notes because otherwise I could go on a rabbit trail for days here, because there's just so much to say. So the first thing is that I want us to understand that the brain is a part of the central nervous system. It's like the master of the central nervous system. So it's connected to the body, especially via nerves, right? And so there has been in the last 15 plus years this great emphasis on one nerve in particular that's called the vagus nerve. Okay, the vagus nerve is like a super highway of information that really links three really important parts of our body together. So it goes through the lowermost part of our gastrointestinal tract. It travels upwards towards our heart and our lungs, and then travels by way of the esophagus and kind of finds its meeting spot in the stress-based part, stress response-based part of our brain, where our fight, flight, or freeze part of our brain is activated. And I don't think it's any accident, and this is what I love about God's design, right, is that all of these three major parts, our gut, our heart, and our brain, are connected by a nerve whose job is to weigh out what stress level is happening to our body through either our sensory experiences of our body, or through our brain, or through even the electromagnetic fields, which sounds wonky, of our heart. And so it's bi-directional. It's talking all of the time. Each of these organs is talking to each other, but today we'll talk more about the gut and the brain. It's called the gut-brain axis. So maybe someone has felt nervous about something, and they have instantly felt like butterflies in their stomach, right? That's not coincidental or accidental. It's actually a hormone dump that is happening into the gastrointestinal system, right? And so a lot of people refer to the gut as actually the second brain. Actually, there's some researchers that talk about it being the first brain. But we know that anywhere between 80 to 95% of our neurotransmitters, get this, are made in our gastrointestinal system. They're not made in our brain. So I think there's this historical view that says we take psychotropic medications to help with our neurotransmitters being transmitted, received, carry over, right? That is primarily happening in the brain. Well, that's not the case. Most of it is actually happening in our gut system. And there's actually different bacteria. And people, I know we're like an antibacterial society, which is the worst thing possible. We're supposed to be dirty and messy and goopy, and have pets lick us and all this stuff. I promise you it's for our good, not for our bad, because it helps our gut microbiome, the bacteria in our gut gastrointestinal system, work for our good in the generation of these wonderful bacteria that support our dopamine, our serotonin, the things that make us feel calm, the things that help us mediate stress and mitigate stress. And so there's a whole lot that happens there. Again, we want this gut bacteria to be like full to the brim, like more good bacterial cells. Actually, we have more gut bacteria than we have cells in our body. So we're more bacteria than we are cells. That's weird. Makes me feel like a little bit like we're walking aliens or something, but we're not. And so we want this, we want to be mostly full of good gut microbes. But for most of us, that's not the case. For most of us, we have a thing called gut dysbiosis, which is where we have more negative gut bacteria, candida, yeast, parasites, that are not working for our good, then we actually have good. And of course, that's from a whole litany of reasons. Everything from the way that we are born into the world, we are exposed and gather the gut bacteria of our mother, whether we're vaginal birth, C-section, breastfed, bottle fed, it goes on and on. This all matters to our gut microbiome. If we've been exposed to antibiotics, especially repeated antibiotics in our life, that changes our gut microbiome for a very long time. If not, some researchers say forever. The foods that we eat, the medications that we take, so things like birth control pills, even certain antidepressants, can mess with our gut microbiome diversity. Yeah, being overly, like I said, antibacterial, wiping out our gut microbiome. And again, like I said, the foods that we eat have a huge part to play. So really, what is our goal as good mental health clinicians and good stewards and friends to this beautiful gut biome that we have? It is to take good care of these little bacteria like they are our pets. I think Dr. Daniel Amen says, we take good care of these little, these, um, these, these, these pets, and they will take good care of us. But if we ignore them and feed them badly and neglect them, then our whole health will pay the price, including our mental health process. So that's just a snip. There's a lot.
I know. I've got 5 days to do this group, and like we're just skimming the surface of what is out there. So
Yes.
okay, so let me ask you this. What is your favorite whole person, what are your favorite whole person tools in the world of mental health? What do you got for us to treat the whole?
What do I got? What do I have? Okay. I feel like some of this seems really intuitive, but we do the complete opposite, most people, right? So most of the things I'm going to say, you're not like, that is mind boggling. How did I never think of that? No. But the question isn't, did you think about it? The question is, get honest and do you do it? Okay, that's the bigger question. So I think first of all is understanding, this is a big one. No one likes to feel pain, right? No one likes to purposely allow themselves to be able to feel and understand their own stories of pain. And yet, if we're going to heal, this is not mine, so I didn't trademark it, but we'll use it anyway. If we're going to heal, we have to feel, right? We have to feel the hard stuff. We have to feel grief. We have to allow ourselves to unpack our stories in the ways that it trips us up today. Because it will. If we don't pay attention, it will trip us up. So one is understanding our stories of emotional pain, and if that requires a therapist, then get yourself one, because we're actually good people, I promise. Then being purposeful in our attention towards self-care. Remembering that we are whole beings. So that means that we can't just say, well, I'm only going to worry about exercise, or I'm only going to worry about my diet, but I'm going to stay up until 1 a.m. every night and chug coffee like it's on auto drip. Like, duh, that's not a good recipe for whole care, right? So recognizing the importance of sleep and refusing, like protecting sleep like it's our job, looking at our lives and being purposeful on saying, that is not a yes, that is really a best yes. That is a yes that I'm escaping guilt or I'm doing out of obligation, but I'm kind of resentful of this yes. Being a great steward of our time. Eating good food. This is where I think people freak out because they're like, well, what do you mean eat good food? Because do I eat keto? Do I do a Whole30? Do I what do I? And I'm like, okay, no. Like, let's just eat recognizable food that like our great grandparents would have eaten as food. So like, eat a lot more vegetables. Eat fruit, but less than we eat vegetables. Cut out packaged processed junk that doesn't look like food, right? Have a whole lot of fats that are good for us fats. So we're not in the 90s. The 90s that said fats are bad and will make you fat. That's a lie. Your brain is mostly fats. and it needs good fat like avocado oil, like coconut oil, whole even avocados. Like, reacquaint yourself with good fat and eat it. Like, put it on a salad. Don't make food be a role in our life that it wasn't supposed to be. We're not supposed to have a party in our mouth all day, every day. Food is actually medicine and fuel, and it is incredibly healing and powerful for us. But it's not meant to be a party in our mouth all the time. Because if we're using it that way, we're using it as a drug, as an emotional something, which goes back to let's learn our stories, right? But really, it's about self-care. Love other people, play, laugh. I told you, these are not novel things. But are we doing them, right? When's the last time you had a big belly laugh? When you went outside with your bare feet and you played and you let the sun shine down on your face, walk your dog, get breathless, like those types of things. So it's not hard, but it's looking at your life as not fractured. We're meant to participate fully in the care and concern of our life. Yeah.
Very good. You just really, I'm like shaking my head. Yes, yes, yes. You're going through like a very stressful time. It is super important to laugh.
Laugh.
Find the hardest. I mean, we laughed about some pretty hard stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
So necessary.
Well, and it's like this. If you're going through a season of growth, right, where you're facing a plethora of hard, your natural intuition should be to honor the fact that you're working and processing through something pivotal and hard. And so you might not want to put your foot on the gas for doing a whole host of hard and heavy stuff physically or mentally, right? So it might be, okay, this is a season where I walk more than I run and I do more yoga versus training for a half marathon, right? Like, and then there's going to be seasons where the sun is shining on the inside and the outside. I'm feeling a little bit more of my strength. And now I'm going to challenge my body. I'm going to take on some stuff. So again, it's developing this friendship and relationship of trust and honoring your body for what it does for you. Because it does a lot for you versus, well, I should be doing so-and-so and baloney. So-and-so is not in your body.
Living your life.
Living your life. Yep.
Okay, and then the last question I have for you is, I know that a lot of people believe that if you just eat right, you can get all the good stuff going. And how do you feel that supplements are a part of your view of the whole person?
Yeah. I feel like maybe if we go back to our great-grandparents' time, maybe that would have been the case, right? But there certainly has been a change. Number one, how we live our life is different. We are all stressed people. We live in chronic stress, which means that our body is chronically compromised. Which means our gastrointestinal system is much more compromised in what it can actually absorb from nutrients from the food that we eat. Two, if we're honest, most of us do not eat a properly nutrient-dense diet. Most of us eat what is called the standard American diet, and it's no accident that it's called the SAD diet, because it's mostly high on processed carbs, processed flours. If you look at most of the food on the standard American diet, it's all one color, typically brown or else artificially dyed or colored. And we are not getting the nutrients that we need from that food. In fact, much of that food leaches out of our system the nutrients that we need. So it doesn't do us any benefit whatsoever. And then I think lastly, the food that we eat is different. It's more chemically processed. How it's grown is different. Our soil in and of itself is nutrient deficient based on what it used to be. And so there's certain nutrients that we can't even get them from our food. Or things like omega fatty acid, for instance. I picked on that one for brain health, and because it's anti-inflammatory for the gut. We would have to eat a hot ton of fish. And the problem with that is, let's say that we lived not in the Midwest like I do, and we were right by the ocean and we could get our hands on a lot of fresh fish. Well, that fish itself would be compromised because of the lead and the mercury in the fish. So it wouldn't be healthy for us to eat that amount. So we have to get it from supplementation. This is why it works together with the food that we eat. Hey, babe, I'll be with you in just a sec. No, thanks.
No, I can make my own sandwiches.
Babe, adios. I'll be with you in a minute.
Sandwiches.
Babe,
I'm hungry.
fine. Make a sandwich.
Daddy out.
Real life.
Real life is happening here too.
I'm hungry. I'm hungry. I guess I'm making him independent. He wants to make his own sandwich. God love him. Go make a sandwich. Okay.
Very okay. Well, that is all I have. And if you wanted to add anything, go right ahead.
Well, I think, some people ask me, what in the world would I recommend if I were going to, what do I think is like a core for supplements, right? So I'm just going to list out what would be my faves, and it changes a lot based on what research I'm reading on any given day. I will just give myself that away. But I think for me, some of my faves would be probiotics, of course, with the enzymes that are going to break down the exoskeleton. I bet you'll talk about that, or somebody will be talking about probiotics, right? So one with the enzymes that are going to actually do the job. Prebiotics, so through the food that you eat, especially lots of veggies and things with fiber. But again, you can also take supplements that have prebiotics that actually feed the good gut bacteria to help them proliferate. Omega-3 fatty acid, so important for the gut and the brain. Magnesium to help, if you're going to take probiotics that help kill the bad stuff, you need to have oxygenated blood that's happening. You need to have detoxification that's happening. And to be wise about your probiotics, because like I said, if 80 to 95% of our neurotransmitters are made in our gut, then there are certain types of probiotics that with strains that actually support certain types of neurotransmitter creation. Hello. Let's get to the source. Let's be supporting of those things that are going to make a monumental difference. So there you have it.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I'm so glad that you joined us and shared all your wisdom. So thankful.
Hey, thank you for having me. Have a great night, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.